The recording. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have my beautiful friend, Dr. Nicole Andreatta, or simply Dr. A, here with me today. And Nicole, she's a neuroscientist and an executive coach. And honestly, she's one of the most beautiful, heart-centered, wise, and grounded women I have ever met. Because she combines the science of the brain with the soul of positive psychology, which is like something I'm a big, big fan of. And I think that this is also both like deeply empowering and incredibly human. And with a doctorate in psychology and two master degrees, no, it's like you're a freaking brain, Nicole. She brings an abundance of knowledge, right? And we love abundance. And but even more so, she brings her presence. And what I really love about Nicole is that she really makes you truly feel seen. And I always feel somehow expanded in her energy. And what I also love most about Nicole is that she does not only talk about these things, she really kind of brings healing into her presence and she lives it. And she also has worked with thousands of people, guiding them reconnect with their strengths, rewrite their old stories, why they cannot have something, why they shouldn't do something, and step into a more joyful, aligned version of themselves. And I'm speaking about myself too. And whether she's coaching individuals, working with organizations, or just having a heart-to-heart conversation like we do now, her gift is creating safety and transformation all at once. Okay. And today we combine both our hard topics, which is the intersection of money, neuroscience, and positive psychology. And I honestly can't wait for our conversation because it's going to be magic. Perfect. Yay. Nicole,
Hey,
here
oh
you
my,
are.
Christina, thank you so much for that incredibly generous introduction. I'm really honored to be here and to share this space with you. I really admire the work that you're doing to empower women around wealth, emotional regulation, two areas that, as we both know, are so interconnected with our inner narratives and our nervous systems, which is I guess, why we're here and why we love these topics so much. For me, the intersection of neuroscience and positive psychology and money isn't just about understanding the brain or the research. It's about just creating a felt experience, of safety and worth and expansion, helping people, especially women, we love that,
Yeah.
reclaim, their joy, their authority, and just really design the lives that they dream of it and rooted, of course, in what they value. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nicole. And I mean, maybe to start with, maybe you can introduce yourself. Like, what is your background? And because I mean, you've been working as a director of a clinic for I don't know how many years. You've been accompanying like people with like brain like damages, right? Like, I don't know for how long. So it was like a very, very important part for you. And what has made you change to positive psychology? I think that is really interesting for all the listeners to understand and to know. And maybe what was your own journey with money over that time, right? Because financial stress, I think this was also something that was accompanying you for a period of time. So how did you deal with it, and how did you find this, like with being a neuroscientist and a positive psychologist and like this money thing? So
Wow. Two very, very big questions. So I'll start with my path. My first love is definitely neurorehabilitation. So I started at 19. I got a job that said, if you want to be in the healthcare field, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, psychologist, whatever, this is a great entry level job for you. And I fell in love instantly because there really aren't very many things, places where you can see this type of progress, this type of miracles. Like the brain is incredible. So to see someone come in nonverbal, unable to walk, completely dependent, and leave saying, thank you so much. I'm going back to my job. I'm going back to my life. I'm driving, whatever. Like incredible. That kind of potential and at the rate the brain can heal and change and evolve just really blew me away. Um, and so I just fell in love with it instantly, and it really just set the course for my life and my education and my work. And so over decades of time, and as I moved into leadership, one of the things that I brought was this hope and optimism because I had seen so many times what the brain was capable of, right? But it was always from this deficit standpoint. Like I could sit with a family or a patient and hold space, a possibility in a really real way, right? About potential of what the brain could do. So, in simple terms, like you can go from a wheelchair to walking, right? Like
Wow.
so that like we'll just use that as an easy example. And but somewhere around 10, 15 years ago, as I got introduced to positive psychology, which like when I was getting my doctorate was fairly new. It's only a like 30-year-old branch of psychology, and
Yeah.
I learned about it after my doctorate, much later actually. So I started to get into positive neuroscience and positive psychology, and it what really began to sink in a deep way is that the same science that we were using to help people rebuild after trauma could be used for anything, right? Like to build and grow on our strengths, to make more money, to have more joy, meaning, purpose, and that yeah, that neuroplasticity is not just about recovering deficits, but it's about anything that you want. And I know it sounds kind of obvious, but I didn't think about it that way,
Yeah.
until much later in my career. And once I began to have that really sink in, it's like we know, I mean, it's even now from when I began this process, people talk a lot more about habits and understanding that we are our habits and things, but that's neuroplasticity and it's true. So how and what we think is developing new neural pathways, which kind of sinks into your work and the narratives that we have about money, the way that we talk about ourselves, isn't just these free floating ideas aren't out here somewhere. They're actually neurons firing in our brain that are well-worn pathways. And if we want to think differently, we actually have to manage our thoughts and create new narratives and practice them. And then they become more natural over time and real and become our truth and our reality.
Mhm.
No different than someone who is in a wheelchair who learns to walk. It's the same neuroscience as
Wow.
us changing our narratives about money or ourselves.
It's so empowering, Nicole, to know that you can change your life. You can change the narratives, and what you've been telling me, I used to know more from the manifestation area, like from the secret, from all these, from manifestation coaches. But now I think neuroscience gets more and more into that field, right? That you can really change your life by changing your thoughts, by changing the narratives you're telling yourself. So it's so, so empowering. And when, for example, someone like with like a money, I don't know, like the name trauma, but someone with a heavy money story, comes here, it's like, okay, I want to change it. What is it that you recommend this person to do who has like has never done anything before? Like, what are the things, the steps that also take the brain to adjust to a new reality? And
Um, well, let me just acknowledge what you're saying that neuroscience. So, like our money stories begin like with early experiences. Like we've definitely talked about it, like before we're even conscious of them. Um, and what happens is, and these stories aren't unique to money, but in psychotherapy or in narrative therapy, they talk about just a problem story.
Mhm.
And or just, I mean, stories. We'll just say stories. We won't get so stuck on problems, but we have certain narratives, and then very, very early on, we just begin to look for things that reinforce the story that we're writing. So, and we're missing tons of exceptions to the problem story or to the story we're creating.
Yeah.
Um, so it could work for and against us in lots of ways, but Um, so sometimes in the narrative work, it's challenging these problem stories with looking for exceptions of when these things weren't true and
Mm,
being to expand on those exceptions and what took place and what contributed to the exceptions. And it builds new stories, but and opportunities. And then what the brain does, once you pin an exception, so you've had one narrative and then in just one conversation, we come up with exception. You go, yeah, but not on Mondays, right? Like I just,
mhm.
it did. And then all of a sudden that next Monday, your brain goes, ah, that's true. It's Monday. And I notice all the reasons why that isn't true. And our brain will just naturally
Yeah.
start looking, noticing, no difference than when you're like, no, I've never heard of that bakery before. And then the next day you see the bakery truck drive by, right? Because your brain has
Yes.
pinned it and it does this all subconsciously, right? Like it's just, so we put our brain to work for the exceptions to this
Yeah.
story. First, we have to identify and tell our brain, wait, no, look out. There's times when there is hope or possibilities or where
Yeah.
that problem isn't true. So that's one way we begin to shift. Um,
But it starts with awareness, no? Like it's like being aware of the narratives you're telling yourself. Like, wait, is
yeah, we have to start there, right? We have to
right?
know what
Exactly.
is there. That's the foundation. And very much, I know one of the essential parts of the work that you're doing is what isn't it? How do you feel about money? What are yeah, what's your experience with it?
Yeah.
Um, what are the narratives about yourself and about abundance or deservedness? Being deserving, deservedness is not a word.
Deservability,
Um,
no? Deservability.
being deserving, yeah.
The great new
So
words, the great new words.
yeah, yeah. So money is never, just about money. It's about identity, safety,
Yes.
work. The brain loves patterns,
Mhm.
um, but we can consciously rewire old patterns by cultivating awareness and choosing new beliefs that are anchored in our values and our reality, our truth, not these old, um, worn out fears or perceptions that
Yeah.
don't serve us anymore.
Don't serve us anymore, definitely. And I mean, I have read an article where a coach said she can change a belief in an instant.
Yes, it's absolutely
It's absolutely true. Okay, to change a belief in an instant. And that's fine because sometimes we're watching a documentary and we're just like, oh my God, this is just so shocking. I don't want to believe this anymore. Like I think that you can definitely do that. But how long does it take to embody that? Because we know like this is like on the mind level and it goes into our subconscious, but how long does it take until we embody this truth for us? I mean, how does that work? Like how do nervous system here and the subconscious mind work together like to make it happen in our 3D reality, let's say it like this.
Christina, I always think of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, when with this concept that you're talking about, because she had to go through what she did, right? Like she went on the journey and she met people and she faced fears and she found out things about herself that she didn't know. She found strength and she collaborated and and then she got to the end and then she found out that she had it all along, right? And like it was just
Yeah.
that. Well,
Yeah.
and so the truth is that we really can make exponential cosmic shifts in an instant, but sometimes we need a process, and that's okay. Like the reality is that we can make major shifts in an instant, and that people being hard on themselves and thinking, because neuroplasticity also does work through habits and through repetition. I mean, that's what neuroplasticity is. So it does take habit sometimes and practice and you know reinforcement for
Mhm.
things, for us in our human form to really believe things. But I can't deny the fact that it's also possible to catch a truth for yourself, and it can be and and you don't always necessarily have to relearn the lesson over and over again, or so it's exciting that that is possible. But I think, a lot of times it takes practice,
Yeah,
it takes practice.
repetition, right, is the repetition part. Yeah, I think that sometimes, for example, I mean, I've been like on a very deep transformation journey for, I mean, for years, and you know me for some years, so you exactly know like how I also progressed in the last time, the last years, and I always like used to think, Nicole, that it's about like fixing, fixing myself. And also here, I've heard like when you are focusing on fixing, your brain will also look for more evidence for you to fix yourself, So
Yeah.
yeah, what is it there? Like, and what to do or what to look for instead of fixing to say, okay, yeah, what can I do now?
Okay, well, now you're talking real talk positive psychology, right? That I love so much because um the science really has shown that our greatest potential for well-being, for success, um, for meaning and purpose and, moments of flow are all based in our strengths
Mhm.
and the things that, we're inherently good at. And
Yeah.
that when we focus on what's working and understanding why,
Mhm.
so like we sit in, like at the year and we're doing New Year's resolutions or whatever, like it's really most common, right, to think about things you want to level up on that you aren't so good at or you haven't thought has gone well. Like,
Yes.
and the science shows very well that that usually fails. Like all of the resolutions around that aren't impactful. But what science does also show is that when we set goals around things that we're already excelling at or that we're already good at and we level up, which we just don't do enough. And that's why I love positive psychology is like, what am I already slaying at? And how can I be even better? Because that is where our greatest potential is. And that is where we gain real momentum for success, for wealth, for happiness, and um, and then naturally we can use some of that energy to shore up. Like if we have a real hole in the boat, like if a weakness means that it's a real drain and it's gonna sink our ship, like we got to patch the hole.
Yeah.
But if we put a good chunk of our energy into our strengths, I think of speaking of a boat, and I love this idea is that so we're the boat and the sail is our strengths,
Mhm.
right? And so we catch wind. Like if we have a goal or a destiny, right? Our sail and the way we use our strengths is how we gain momentum, how we go. If we have a hole in the boat, like then we're gonna sink. So you got to patch your hole. But if you're only tending to the boat and making like shining it up and patching the holes, like you're never leaving the
Yeah.
port, never getting anywhere. And so you know, if you think of like, it's like put a little putty in there and get going with your strengths, like
Yes.
as long as it doesn't sink, you're gonna be halfway there while somebody else is, making it perfect,
Yeah.
in terms of matching, the holes. And so
Absolutely.
I sink, but your strengths are where your greatest potential is. And so when you're thinking about your goals and the life that you want, you should be thinking about the things that really resonate, that bring you joy, that you're good at, not about I need to go do this work and heal these things first before I leave the port.
Yeah, this is so true because in the end, I mean, I was there. I put my hustling in corporate last year, put it into my healing journey. I was literally hustling, like in healing, and the focus was always like, okay, what else is there? I have to resolve this, I have to resolve that, and I have to do this, And the thing is, it's never like it never stops. Like another thing that comes up, another thing that comes up, and I used to think like, okay, in order to receive abundance, I have to be in abundance mindset first. I have to heal all my limitations, blah 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 blah. So it's always conditional. It's always conditional. Something has to happen in order to get something. It's just like, oh, once I get a boyfriend, I'll be happy. It's the same. It's the same.
That
Like
way,
that
yeah.
doesn't work out this way. So I'm very curious about like this, like what to focus instead of saying like, okay, I need to heal that. Can we also create abundance and create like a beautiful life despite having limitations, despite having maybe beliefs that don't serve us well? Because in the end, Nicole, I don't think that we can resolve them all because otherwise we will be busy until we die and there will be still trillions left, right? So what would you recommend like to like the listeners here, like what to do instead of focusing on limitations, what to do instead?
Well, there are so many things. I mean, right now, what's just popping up with just in light of this conversation is to start getting curious ab- about what went right and storing those things. So what we do with problems, because we have, a negativity bias, like from an evolutionary standpoint, we're on the lookout for things
Yeah.
that hurt us, that go wrong, and we're well versed. Our nervous systems are well versed, and it is trying to protect us. But we could go on and on about how it gets it wrong because it hasn't evolved to the point where it knows a real threat from a fake threat like a
Yeah.
saber-toothed tiger too. We're just stuck in traffic, right? So it's the nerve, it needs to evolve further, but that's what it does. So we have that. So when we have any sort of discomfort, our brain is always trying to figure out how to avoid that discomfort ever again. Like it doesn't, we as a species do not like any discomfort. Um, so we story things. We say, oh, and we make associations. And this is how our brain learns and works and categorizes information. It's like it puts like things with like things. It makes associations. And we spend a lot of time. I think it's because, speaking of childhood, I think it's because I didn't like that barista because that perfume reminded me of my second grade teacher, and that person was mean. And, in our brain, it goes, and we're just, oh, the like building these networks. Um, but what we don't do when we meet the same barista who has this beautiful smile, and we kind of get that warm feeling, like when we're getting coffee and we just feel good. Um, we don't, we might notice and smile and think, oh, that lady was nice or something, but we definitely don't go, I had a particularly positive reaction to her because she reminds me of my second grade teacher and she was so sweet to me. And I remember when she helped me learn this thing, right? Like we never go down that same rabbit hole of storing and understanding when we have washes of comfort and peace and calm in normal moments, right? Like our reaction to a color, a smell, or a person, like what is it about this person that makes my nervous system feel so safe? What is it about her values or her way of being? Like
Yeah.
that's for me, that is serving me. We don't story things, and
Yeah.
storing and making associations and understanding when we're having even micro moments of peace, joy, calm, contentment is the start. So it's being mindful and curious about what works at any given moment. If you have a moment, a glimmer of where you feel really regulated or happy, like be curious about every single thing that went into that moment.
Mm.
So maybe, for me, I might notice that I did my morning routine. Like when I have time in the morning for myself and I meditate and I like to read and learn like just a little bit, like it's usually positive, like I read something that's related to these ideas that I love so much. And I meditate and I have my coffee. I have those moments. Like it sets me in a different mindset so that I'm more apt to notice like things and have these more positive experiences, right? Like it's um it has a ripple effect on my day. And
Yes.
so midway through the day, I might, if I might notice that, and remember, you know what, that's good for me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm, I'm I'm more present right now with this person, or I feel like I'm doing better at my job. And so that actually is me, that's joy, right? For me, like when I have a great session with someone, and so I could say, oh, that felt good. I'm using my gifts. I'm in the right place. I'm doing the right thing with my life. But at the same time, it's like, how did that moment happen? It's because these are the ways that I took care of myself. And
Mm.
they all, so your brain is
Yeah.
keeping track of what's working. So that was a lot said. To sum that up, begin with being curious about any moments of peace, calm, contentment, joy, and think of associations and stories and all the things that go into it the same way you do when even like with a tension with a coworker, right? Like we could ruminate, we're driving home, we're thinking about what she said and what I said, whatever. But what about when the coworker comes and stands in the doorway and you have this lovely interaction
Mm.
and you collaborate and it's you think that's just not even a big deal. Like you both were like, oh yeah, got that, good. Like we like came up with a
Yeah.
creative solution or whatever. We don't think, oh man, I really want that to happen again. That was generative.
Yeah.
It felt for me like we were moving that project along or that idea. And what all went into that made us is working in our relationship.
Yeah.
What is it about me? What all went into having that?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be so generative to have the same curiosity about
Absolutely.
the so that's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
one
Absolutely.
major tip, and it takes practice because of our negativity bias, but it gets easier
Yes.
with time. But at first, you have to be really mindful and practice and
Yeah.
so it might be sometimes I have my clients set timers
Hmm.
on their phone, maybe like 4 times a day, and it's just like what's gone right, or what did you notice, what's gone right, what moments of peace, calm, contentment have I, had so
Yes.
far, moments of joy,
Yeah.
um, and then get used to storing them and thinking about them in a deeper way.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think we do smile to ourselves, but we just have no curiosity about why.
Yeah. About why, yeah, definitely. And it's about like literally training the brain, right? The RAS, like the filter, like just to see more beauty in our lives. And you mentioned something very, very interesting. It's like the time. And since we're very impatient people, sorry, I don't want to start with the belief, but generally, like this instant gratification, want everything now, like everything has to happen now. Um, Generation Amazon. And like, how long does it take from a neuroscientific perspective to create this new neural pathways and to really like change the reality once like focused on this new belief, like more or less?
So it depends on the individual and how deeply rooted, like where you are on the journey. It's really it's not an exact science, but I can tell you that. Let me give you this example. I was working with actually it was a team one day, and we were talking about this concept, and we were using the word glimmers, which was coined by Deb Dana as the opposite of triggers. So a glimmer is literally something just out of the blue that has that spark of
Hmm.
joy
Hmm.
and calm. So it's a part of the autonomic nervous system. So this is happening precognition and sends it up this neural cascade of dopamine or serotonin. And we're like, oh, it's just like a freebie, like it just happens, right? Just like a trigger does sometimes too, that where we become irritable or upset or feel threatened, precognitive, right? It's like, so our autonomic nervous system, glimmers and triggers. So we were talking about glimmers, and she said that she had been she woke up to the sound of chirping birds and
Mm.
that she felt happy and that she heard the birds chirping and that she thought about summer was coming and she thought about her kids and like childhood memories and she went on this whole thing about it. And that was all triggered by the birds chirping.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, that, that was lovely. And she described it really well. And so cut. Next morning, I wake up in my house, in my bed. And the first thing, I mean, I had no plan of taking her glimmer. I had no interest in birds chirping being my like Cinderella, whatever moment, right? Like I just was happy for her. I was like, oh, that's nice, right?
Yeah.
I woke, the first thing I heard was bird chirping. Like literally the first thing, my brain had pinned it. And then I was like, and then I didn't have any of those same associations, but I smiled and I thought of her and I thought of every single one of them. And now that started the neural pathway, right? Like it's like it
Yeah.
changed my brain. And now forever, birds chirping have a different meaning and symbolism to me. So my brain took off with it.
Yeah.
So um
In an
pinning,
instant, no? Like it
yeah.
was also, yeah.
So in terms of mapping, like setting a pin and telling our brains to look for like things, it will listen to you. So it starts um pretty quickly. And maybe it's good to your point to be more specific, like when you're starting this practice to decide to focus on one thing at first to practice because to notice all glimmers, for example. So
Yeah.
make a decision at first to practice one, and you'll get that kind of reinforcement pretty quick. That's one of the reasons why positive psychology works is because it's so reinforcing because it feels good and it works, right? And so, and then we stick with it. And that's why people reach more goals is because of the natural reinforcement and that comes with it. So um, they say that 2 to 3 weeks, in terms of science, is if you set if you made an effort and put this in your phone and made an effort for 3 weeks to check in with this 4 times a day
Mhm.
and work on these stories and even have a partner. You might want to partner with someone because
Yeah.
sometimes we're so used to connecting. We're like, oh, I have such a good friends. We're so good at telling each other we're so transparent about our problems and our pain, but like
Yeah.
we're not as transparent and open and storing our joy. And
Yeah.
I think creating a space for joy-filled, what's working stories with women is really important.
Yes.
So, and that helps in terms of solidifying the neural pathways. And the storytelling is a really powerful way,
Yeah.
that we create new truths. And so that's another thing I would say. But 2 to 3 weeks, but yet um, you'll notice like like things that are associated and like what you're looking like what am I trying my words are getting stuck but associated things with what you're searching for in terms of what brings you calm, peace, and contentment. Like your brain will start making associations, and so it gets to expand. You're like, I think I like
Mhm.
X. Like maybe it's just a song genre, right? Like you're like, oh, I like this song, but then all of a sudden you realize, like, oh, I've never listened to country music before. I like only like that one song, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I like three artists actually.
Yeah.
Like, and you're will be like, and it just expands like the possibilities for joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? It's just like curiosity, focusing on the positive, right? Because mostly we complain and we's like, oh, what is wrong, but what is right? And I
Mhm.
remember like gratitude is a very, very powerful tool to do that. And I remember because we just have literally like 4 minutes, no, sorry, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes left because I didn't
Okay.
upgrade my Zoom yet, but I will do because the topics are getting very interesting here. But I remember, Nicole, that when I started to do my gratitude like practice every day, and after 3 months, I realized that there was like this feeling of gratitude because gratitude is not a thought, it's a feeling in the whole body. I was like, I don't know what is happening. I'm literally sober, but I feel this gratitude for just being able to walk. And you're like, yeah, yeah, it's because you know your brain, this and that happens. And that's really, really interesting. So, like our brain is just so like magical. And once we understand how to utilize that, right, and focus on the positive, as you, as the ambassador of positive psychology, say, I think that this can literally change our lives, no?
Yeah, gratitude. I mean, that there's a reason it's the most well-researched character strength. And because it just works. And I think people kind of get tired of it in that it's just so simple and so like, oh, I know, practice gratitude, but like the truth is it just works.
It is
I
that
mean,
simple.
gratitude practice is something that we can all do and it works. Like the end. Like it just does. And it's just so simple and it feels like low hanging fruit, but yet it's so powerful.
It is. Sometimes it's
It
the
is.
small things that are so powerful because we're looking for some, no, but it has just give me the secret recipe. Just no. But this is just like literally this low-hanging fruit that you have to do on a regular basis that will
Yeah.
literally change your life.
Give,
Thank you
yeah,
so much,
give
Nicole.
resiliency and good energy and all the stuff. Oh, thank you.
So much. Is there something you want to share with the like listeners in the last, we have less than 1 minute, so whatever you want to share, feel free. And maybe how people can maybe work with you or like how they can reach out to you, where they can follow you. I will definitely link you in the caption. But like
Oh,
if there's
so
something
much.
you want to share here,
Great. Well,
Nicole.
if you're interested in learning more about your strengths and how to leverage them to have the life that you want to, um, whatever that means for you, I'm at drnicoleandriata.com. I have a website. At that address, you can find me on Instagram, same Dr. Nicole Andreatta. So I would love to hear from you, or if you just have any questions about positive psychology or positive neuroscience in general, you can DM me. I'd welcome any conversation.
Great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Christina.
Bye
Go
bye.
do all that.